is John Michael. I work with the Codes Department, and I'll be presenting the cases to the board today for their review and consideration. At this time, we would ask everyone in the audience and at the board alike to please silence your phones or other electronic devices so that the proceedings will not be interrupted. For today's public hearings, the board will review the correspondence that's been submitted both in support and in opposition to each of the cases. The board also reviews correspondence and recommendations from other government agencies in preparation for the hearings. And in today's hearing, staff will then present site plans, maps, photographs, and other documents that comprise the case record. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, each appellant will have the opportunity to present his or her case to the board. After the appellant's presentation, the board will hear those who wish to speak in support of the appeal. If the appeal has opposition, the board will then hear from those parties. After the opposition presents its testimony, the appellant will have the opportunity to provide rebuttal. Under our Board of Zoning Appeals rules, the appellant has 10 minutes for presentation if there's no opposition present. In contested cases, BZA rules allow for 15 minutes for each side. Should the appellant him or herself wish to provide rebuttal testimony, then that appellant should reserve some portion of the originally allotted 15 minutes for such rebuttal. At the conclusion of each hearing, the board will deliberate and then vote on the case. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases under the provisions of the Metro Zoning Code, specifically Section 17.40.180. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Metro Zoning Code, which applies to the entire jurisdiction of the metropolitan government. The Zoning Code was adopted by the Metro Council and became effective on January the 1st of 1998. I'll introduce the entire Zoning Code and make it part of today's record for each of the cases. The Metropolitan Code requires a record of these proceedings. Because the BZA meetings are recorded for Metro Channel 3, transcribed by our court reporter, it is imperative that anyone addressing the board please come forward, speak into the microphones provided here at the front of the room, and each speaker should identify themselves by name and address and then make the desired presentation. The Metro Code also requires 4 members of our 7-member board to establish quorum. Pursuant to board rules, an aggrieved party may request a rehearing within 60 days of the public hearing on the subject case. Additionally, aggrieved property owners may appeal board decisions to the Chancery Court within the same 60-day period. After that time elapses, the board's decision becomes final and no further action can be taken. For the appellants, and we emphasize this strongly, if your appeal is granted, you are required to obtain the permit for which you applied. A permit must be obtained within 2 years in order for the board's approval to remain valid. Beyond 2 years, the board's approval expires and you start from scratch. It should be noted that if any false or misleading testimony is presented to the board approval could be revoked at a later date by means of a show cause hearing before this same Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all the cases have been filed in the proper order. All appellants have been notified by certified mail, and all legal notice requirements have been fulfilled. As a preliminary announcement for the board, I will note that item number 2016-044, the appeal involving the property at 5508 Brick Church Pike up in the Ghostville area, has been deferred to our next meeting, May 19th, 2016. At the beginning of our meetings, we typically call for and recognize elected officials who are in attendance. I see Councilmember Murphy here today. Pleasure to have you. If there are any other members here today who wish to be recognized at this point, even before the cases are called, this would be the appropriate time to bring you forward. Councilmember Murphy, you choose to come forward now or wait for the call?
I'll speak with my people.
Very well. Our board also utilizes a consent agenda. One board member, in this case our chairman, Mr. Ewing, reviews the record for each case prior to the hearing and identifies cases where appellants met the criteria for their requested action. If the reviewing board member determines that testimony in the case would not in fact alter the material facts, then that case is recommended to the board for approval. We will enter into the record those cases that have been so recommended. And if anyone is here in opposition to those cases, we'll ask that you please raise your hand so that the case can be removed from the proposed consent agenda and heard in its regular order. There are 3 cases on today's consent agenda. First, case number 2016-019 involving the property at 301 Seven Springs Way, requesting a variance from side setback requirements. Is there anyone here today in opposition to case number 2016-019? Seeing none, that item will be recommended for the consent agenda. The second such case is case 2016-047, involving the property at 1017 Birchwood Avenue, requesting variance from side and rear setback requirements. Do I see one opponent in the audience?
It's actually my property.
Are you opposing your request, sir?
No, sir, but they did make an error. It should be 12 by 27.
We will remove that item from the consent agenda so that we can address the administrative matter and then take it back up if we're able to make the clarification and reconsider it for possible consent later in the meeting. The third and final item previously identified for consent is case number 2016-050, involving the property at 108 Old Trinity Lane, involving a variance from landscape buffer requirements. Is there anyone in the audience here to oppose case number 050? Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, that leaves us at the moment with cases number 19 and 50 for the proposed consent agenda. It would be appropriate to solicit a board vote for such at this time.
Thank you. We have two cases here for the consent agenda. And is there any discussion for them? Okay. Do I hear a second to the two cases that are been moved to this consent agenda? Okay. Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the two items on consent signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? John Michael, passes
Very well.
unanimously.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, we'll be prepared to launch into the presentations of today's cases. If I may take one moment to address the administrative item before we begin.
Sure.
All right, thank you for that reprieve, Mr. Chairman. The first case that we will hear today is case number 2016-038, involving property located at 2806 Marlin Avenue. This is a matter that had been set before the board previously on a request for 4 variances. Site plan was changed, the request was modified, the first 2 items were brought into compliance with the zoning code. So all that is before the board today is a request for 2 variances. One from the landscape buffer requirements here in the RM20 zoning district, and a second for the perimeter landscaping requirements based upon a 24-foot driveway width. These are the only 2 variances being sought today.
Shawn Michael, before
Yes.
we go on, and I know we've got new people here and all sorts of people watching on Channel 3, could you tell everyone why we require these landscape buffers and what the real purpose of that is?
Congratulations. Mr. Chairman, it's best to defer to the urban forester to give you an outline of that.
We're honored to have our urban forester here, and please.
Hello, my name's Stephen Kivett. I'm the urban forester. The reason for the buffers is to separate different zone districts in the way of screening with sometimes walls or fences, but especially trees and shrubs. The more different the zone district, the more intense the buffer would be. So a D buffer would be a fairly intense buffer with a lot of width to it. An A-type buffer would be something that's almost similar, but not quite. This one happens to be a C-type buffer.
The real purpose is to protect and screen the neighboring properties.
It's exactly right.
And I think one of the good examples of that is if you have some sort of parking lot and people kind of pull up and their lights kind of shining in the neighboring property, that we require fences in some of those situations.
That is correct, yes.
So this is basically if you're doing a certain kind of use that is pretty active, just to kind of differentiate between the neighboring property.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and we appreciate that you're here to guide us through this too. Okay, John Michael, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the zoning map shown here demonstrates that the subject property is at the edge of the district that's marked RM20, residential multifamily 20, up against some RS10 zoning districts here along Marlin, just off of Sharondale Drive. Aerial gives you a sense of the treed lot that's at issue here. The site plan, the updated site plan, has been submitted, demonstrates the layout of the residential structures and garages there within that property proposed for development. The photos from the ground show the face and then across the street from the subject property, up and down Marlin Avenue in these photographs. The appellant will have 15 minutes on this opposed case to present their case. It will be imperative and incumbent upon them to say whatever time they wish for rebuttal. Representatives for the appeal, could you please come forward at this time? If you would identify yourselves by name and address and make the desired presentation. Again, I'll remind you, if you wish to save time for rebuttal, please do so out of this original 15 minutes.
I'm Tyler Pennington with White Pines Building Group at 2517 Eugenia Avenue, Nashville, Tennessee, 37211. We are currently under contract to purchase this property and have brought the plans together and presented them, and are looking to get these two variances. The buffer variance, which would be along not the straight side property, but the one that's angled where it does border the RS10, is we're asking to be reduced from 10 to 5. We still want to do however much landscape, whatever landscape is required, we would be glad to do that in just a smaller amount of space. We're also glad to do whatever type masonry wall, which is part of that code, is required. We would gladly do that as well. And just looking for a smaller space to do that in, basically to allow for a better parking scenario. This allows us to put the parking on the right side up along the straight line and have garages into the units instead of street parking, or instead of just parking spots in the site. We'll actually have garage parking. This also would block any of that kind of traffic and parking lights concern, Mr. Ewing, that you had mentioned, because the buildings will actually be blocking any of that traffic from this RS side of the neighborhood. In addition to our wall, in addition to our landscape buffer, this will allow us to put the building along that side with the parking for just the 4 units. We're only doing 4 units here, and have that along that line. And that's basically that extra 5 feet gives us the space we need to have garages and to have the turning radiuses like our engineer has drawn on the plan. That's pretty much the gist of really what we're. I apologize. The driveway buffer was. Again, this is to maximize the turning radius. I think if we maintained the buffer to the right where the driveway will be, it's going to be very tight for vehicles to get in and out. It would cause a constant problem with the terrain and keeping up of the side buffer. So what we have proposed is, in order to basically have our driveway go further over to the right to the property line, we would then do the pavers, the pervious pavers throughout the whole concrete area. In lieu of concrete, we would have pervious pavers.
But the driveway, you're not asking for a variance on the driveway's width?
No, not the width. Not the width.
But are you asking for a variance on that side of the driveway not to provide any buffers, landscape buffers?
I don't think a buffer was required on that side because that's RM on that side.
The RM side would be a perimeter strip, not a buffer. The perimeter strip is a 5-foot strip with a tree every 50 feet.
Okay.
All right, so,
It's not a buffer, it's a perimeter strip.
okay.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
walk us through, John Michael said that you were initially asking for other variances, and now you've narrowed it
That
down.
was simply a misunderstanding. Originally, we had submitted a plan, and the plans had not been, the architect had not scaled the plans properly. So when the plans got submitted, and I believe Richard at Codes was looking through the plans and scaling them and reviewing them, it showed there was some differences in height layouts, and it was simply an error on the architect's part, so we had to withdraw and get everything corrected.
Okay,
'Cause
so
what
we
they-
have opposition present. They'll have their 15 minutes after you.
Fantastic.
Have you talked to them recently, and where's all that been as far as your discussion with what they're concerned about?
I don't know if Pete has talked to any of the opposition. I have not heard from them directly.
no, sir. Mr. Chairman, my name is Pete Prosser. I'm with Zeitlin Realtors, 4301 Hillsborough Road. When we had originally looked at this property and White Pines had discussed purchasing it, I had contacted Stefan and, went over in detail with him some of this plan. And he expressed that it was something that, he said he would not oppose. He said he would look at it, but he said he didn't see it, see issues. But we had a conversation regarding these buffers and this landscape. And that's the conversation I'd had with Stefan at that time.
So you haven't had anyone, discussion with a council person or anybody else? Is this the first that you've known that there's opposition to your project?
I was not aware of any.
No, we were not aware of it at the time. We hadn't nobody had contacted us, and we hadn't.
Okay.
I mean, we got about 15 letters, and that's highly unusual for a project.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would like to know, just by show of hands, how many people are here today and opposing this particular case? Show of hands. So it appears about 8. Okay. Plus our letters. Could be some of the same people, though. Any other questions?
Can you state your hardship again?
What I had already explained was just having, is that what you're asking, is what I mentioned earlier?
There's paperwork in your, in the packet we received that talks about your hardship. I'm not sure you've mentioned it.
I'm not sure.
Well, I believe regarding the hardship, when we looked at it, was the turnaround and the setbacks, and that
That's all I mentioned earlier.
that was part of it because of, as Tyler mentioned, make it very difficult to turn the cars and the parking, if I'm not mistaken, when it was originally submitted.
It's parking and radius and getting cars in and out appropriately. That's simply that's the hardship we're looking here to help us out.
As
I
John
know
Michael,
that there is another hardship.
right. Well, that's up to you to tell us.
Right.
As John Michael explained, the way that this works is, so you've spoken for roughly 3 minutes now. If you choose to continue to speak, that's your option. We'll hear from the opposition. They'll have 15 minutes total to speak, and the council person could speak as long as she
Sure.
wants. And then you'll be able to come back for rebuttal. So,
Yeah, I would love to hear from the opposition. Like I said, we hadn't heard from any of them or known what was going on there, so we 100% want to get them involved and figure out what's going on with them
Okay.
and talk to them or hear from them first. And
do we
however
have
that
any
happens.
other questions before we hear from the opposition? Okay, no. So let's hear from the opposition, and you'll be invited back. You'll have 12 minutes and 17 seconds. And does the council lady want to come and speak now, or okay. Council Lady Murphy, welcome to the BZA, and talk to us about this particular property.
Great, thank you. Kathleen Murphy, 231 Orlando Avenue, District 24, Metro Councilwoman. As y'all may recall, I don't make a habit of coming here a whole lot. I know that y'all are basically determining the law and things like that, and it doesn't come before the council. And so I put a lot of faith in your decision. And so I don't always get involved in the BZA cases. This
But
one.
Councilor Lady Murphy, we always value your opinion and the other district council people's district opinions too. So if you don't come here, we would love to hear from you by letter, either in support of opposition or any of these cases. And as you know, under our rules, your time speaking here does not count against any side's time. So
Which is great.
you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So this case came before me because some of the neighbors reached out to me saying, can you help explain the situation? This is not an area that has had a lot of BZA cases or zoning changes or SPs or anything like that. So the neighbors reached out to me, and so I'm a little fuzzy on our timeline. I'm thinking that we met maybe a month and a half ago at one of the neighbors' homes and kind of all talked through what exactly the variances were, how the process works. And fortunately, you'll hear from Mr. Grooms in a little bit from the Richland West End, or the Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Association. And they were very helpful in kind of explaining the process to the neighbors. And as they looked at it, they just really kept thinking, this is a property where we all know what the rights are. It's being bought for a reason, and they do have the right to increase the density here, but we feel that they need to do it within the same rules that the other homes on this street have been developed under. Other pieces of property here have increased the density within their property rights without needing these variances that we're aware of. And so we hope that this property will be held to those same rules and standards. And one thing that I was really kind of stuck out to me is changing the landscape buffer from 10 feet to 5, as you pointed out, Chairman, is that landscape buffer is there for a reason. It's to really change, to kind of step down and buffer between higher density and lower density. And what stuck out in my mind is there are not a lot of evergreen trees that are going to be around year-round on this landscape buffer that's only 5 feet in width. You really need that 10 feet, not only so you can have some good-sized buffer plants and trees and things like that, but 5 feet really is not a significant landscape buffer, and I think that's something to really point out here. And so that's kind of where I come from in this. We had talked about a month and a half ago. We came 2 weeks ago here for it when it had been deferred. We only received this revised plan, I think, on Monday midday, and so we've talked, and really the neighbors still feel like they should be able to do if they want to redevelop this property, they need to do it within the standards and the rules that everybody else has followed. And so I'm happy to kind of answer more questions, but I think Mr. Grooms could probably explain the neighbor's position a little bit better than I can.
Have you heard from anyone in your district who's in favor outside the applicant of this, the way it's proposed?
No, and I hadn't, I've not, I will speak to them today, but we have been not in communication with them.
Okay. Word to the wise for people that come in from the BZA, we have 35 districts in the Metro Council. It's always good to contact your duly elected official who represents the neighborhood prior to coming here, because oftentimes the council person provides us someone that can bring two sides together, gather more information, and like I said, there are elected voices for this, and so that's why we appreciate you being here, and we're going to hear from the opposition, and if you have something to add later, you of course can.
Happy to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Tom Grooms, resident of Hillsborough West End neighborhood where this house is located. I appear today on behalf of Hillsborough West End, and also representing the interests of the concerned neighbors that were identified by raising their hands. I would point out in my initial presentation that the issue here is a fourth dwelling unit. That's where we are. The developers want these variances to enable them to construct a fourth dwelling unit. And of course, we are here in opposition to the variances. We don't think that the applicant has shown hardship in any way, shape, or form. As the board's well aware, to prove an entitlement to the variances sought, the applicant must prove that the hardship arises from the nature of the land and not from the applicant's plan or desire to maximize the number of units on the parcel of land. The legal principle in Tennessee is well established in the case of McClurkin versus the Board of Zoning Appeals for Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. Judge, as he was then, Judge Jawoda of the Court of Appeals said, while the board is vested with broad discretion in the variance area, we do not believe that it is authorized to grant a variance when the only hardship the owner in complying with the zoning regulations is a result of a condition existing not in the land itself, but in the structure which was created or altered by the owner of the property in violation of the zoning ordinance. Of course, this was a case where they'd already built an illegal quadplex, but same principle applies. Also, the case for variance here is made even weaker by the lack of evidence of hardship other than the pecuniary loss, which has been held insufficient by itself to justify variance. In my research, I also discovered that the Supreme Court had actually weighed in on this in the case of City of Westlake versus Forest City Enterprises, and it's said very much like the Tennessee Court of Appeals, the following. By its nature, zoning interferes significantly with the property owner's uses of the property. It is Hornbook law that mere diminution of market value or interference with the property owner's personal plans and desires relative to his property is insufficient to invalidate a zoning ordinance or to entitle him to a variance or rezoning. So our position is clear, obviously, that the parties have not proven hardship that would entitle them to a variance to construct this fourth unit.
So how is 10 feet versus 5 feet going to affect you all? Is it the size of trees? Is it the number of plants? I mean, why is that so objectionable? Just doing 5 feet as opposed to 10?
What is objectionable is the variance, Mr. Ewing. I mean, it's on the legal question of whether they're entitled to a variance.
So you just don't believe they are entitled to any variance?
I don't think they've proven the hardship.
And I'll go back to what I said. I mean, I don't think that these homes are very close together to begin with. They're going to be close together. That 10-foot buffer allows to have more of a sound absorption, more of a light absorption, to really actually be a buffer between the two. I think that it's key to when you're moving from the higher density use to a lower density use, and if it's required, it's required. So I know we've got some other neighbors that would like to speak as well.
And we'd love to hear from any of the neighbors that want to speak in opposition.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Scott Mabey. I reside with my wife at 2810 Marlin Ave. I think my counterparts here made great points. I don't want to waste the Board's time. I think the variance request, you have to show hardship, and it seems in this instance that the hardship is trying to fit 4 units on one lot. Parking is not a hardship. I guess the next item is, we believe, I reside right next to this property. For us, we purchased the property. We were well aware of the building that's going on in Nashville, and I think my wife and I would deem that if the side buffer variance was granted, we would have a financial hardship on us because of that. So I think a lot of people look at homes, they want more space between the homes, and I certainly think we should uphold the denial of the variance. And then I think the third thing that was just troublesome to me, and I'll take ownership and accountability for this if the Board doesn't agree with this, we met as a group several times, and I made the argument that we should not reach out to the applicants. I felt like it was their responsibility to reach out to us. They have not done that, and I think if they're going to be building a 4-unit facility here, and then to stand in front of the Board and seem shocked that they would be expected to reach out to the neighbors and just get their feedback, I think that's troublesome to me. That's it.
Can
Thanks.
you show us which is your residence on this?
Sure. I think it's John Michael. It's I'm number 4 or A, right next to. Yeah, we're A.
Okay.
Please come forward and sit down, press the red button, and identify yourself and your address for the board.
My name is Toby Cannon. I reside with my husband at 2812 Marlin Avenue. We have been residents of Nashville since 1976, and during that time have owned and lived in 5 homes, 3 of which we have rehabbed, 1 of which we built. In doing so, we looked at the property we were building, that we were going to be purchasing, and worked within the limits of what that property was. We feel that has been ignored in this case, and ask for your denial of this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, my name is Karen Scott. I live at 2840 Woodlawn Drive. I actually live in a condo complex that sits right in front of this property on Woodlawn. We back up to Marlin. I've lived there 23 years, and we've talked a lot with neighbors and gotten a feeling that's the same. We're very concerned. You can't see by looking at this picture on the screen the issues that we have currently with traffic and parking on Marlin. I'm sure that Mr. Maybe would agree with me that it's a problem now, and I don't know if the builder or the developer has taken into consideration that when you have a 4 multi-family unit, there's going to be more cars than just the people that live there. We have issues, you know, you can't hardly drive down that road currently without pulling over if a car is meeting you. So that's a major concern. Another concern is, I think that the appellant is saying that the hardship is the uniqueness of this property. And you can tell by looking at that there's no uniqueness about this property. And we'd love for the support of the board to keep this appeal ongoing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Davidson. I also live in 2828 Woodlawn Court, which is the condo we live in. And, you know, this has been a very interesting exercise in how developers come into your neighborhood. I am not very, it took us a long time to research this. But I agree with everyone's statements that, number one, we don't think they've proved hardship in terms of the law. The other issue we have is, as Karen said, the safety aspects. We had, the other night, one of our residents park on Woodlawn, which is a big street, and a doctor was going to work and hit him straight out and totaled his car, and that's on Woodlawn. Marlin Avenue, and I measured it myself, it's 17 and a half feet wide. 2 cars, like she said, cannot pass. And if you think about, you know, 4 units, huge units, the trees are gone. It's like sardines in a can. You know, it just doesn't make sense for our neighborhood. It's not in keeping for a lot of reasons. Then there are the safety aspects, and I don't think anyone has even addressed the sewage and water runoff from this thing that's about to be built. So thank you for reading our opposition letter, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else to add? No. Councilor Murphy, do you have anything else to add? And
No, I think
can you come to the microphone?
I think we've covered it. I think we've expressed a lot of our concerns in not just in terms of the hardships that are being and the variances asked for, but in general, you know, we're near this property is near some great Hillsborough corridor, you know, near 440, near West End. It is convenient to a lot, so I understand this is a popular area. Clearly, as we all know in Nashville, we've got to get our infrastructure caught up to to where we are and where we're going. But really, at the end of the day, I think my neighbors have really done a good job at expressing their concerns about these hardships if they were granted. And I think that we respectfully ask you to deny them.
One more thing, Council Lady Murphy. You obviously have spoken about your opinion. We've heard from the opposition. Is there any middle ground to this? It doesn't seem like you're saying just deny it. There's no middle ground here.
I think we'd be happy to talk with the developers. I don't know what their plans are. I don't know if it's something that there is wiggle room on their side. I'm happy to, if the board asks, I'm happy to facilitate that between my neighbors and them. And we
Guess
can go
what
from
I'm
there.
asking, and we have all these letters too, is they're asking for 5 feet, you're saying 10 feet. It doesn't seem like there's much in between. Is there?
I think we'd have to sit down with the developers and see what else they might be willing to kind of move on. I think that there is, this is more than just that variance. I think there are other things that they might be able to do by right that maybe they're willing to negotiate on that we could then negotiate on as well. So
That's fair.
I'm happy to address that potentially.
Councilwoman, I don't know if you've noticed, but they're not asking for any variance on the rear setback. And would you be in favor, or would you be willing to accept if a variance on the rear setback rather than the side buffer?
I think that is something that I would need to really look at and compare, see what the rhythm and the spacing of the rest of the block is. I mean, I can see it as an overview there, but honestly, I don't think, and I am not prepared to kind of talk about what I'm willing to negotiate on right here, right now. That's something that I really feel like I need to talk to the neighbors more before just, but that is something that we can consider. I just don't want to commit to anything without talking with my constituents.
And I would like to say, reading these letters on the behalf of the opposition, these are lengthy opposition letters. Sometimes we just get a paragraph saying I'm opposed to it, but these
I have
are
very thorough constituents.
Yes, these are in great detail, and as you know, sometimes of dealing with the legislature, sometimes you just get a boilerplate letter that everybody basically just sends the same thing.
Yeah.
These are very unique letters, so I think you have a very passionate group of people that are here about this.
Yes, yes, they are. Thank you.
Mr. Ewing, again, I would say that the issue is the fourth unit, and I don't think there's a compromise on that.
Okay.
I mean, just be realistic about it.
Yeah, I would answer that as the homeowner next door as well. I don't think we're looking to, they show 5, the zoning board says 10, we meet at 7.5. I think we're just looking to uphold the regular building standards in Nashville, and in my opinion, they have not shown the hardship for that to bring about a compromise.
And I will kind of follow up with what they've said. This is something that I've, in the last, I guess, almost 9 months being on the council, really thought about and has kept me up at night is when we do allow these variances and we do change things in the zoning code on our side through planning or through the council, changing things through SP or things like that, or grant variances and things, what does that do to the overall zoning code? Because again, here, this is a piece of property where they can expand and build probably a lot of different things. I'm no engineer or developer, but I assume, on a decent-sized lot, you could definitely build a few homes. And if we grant this variance, then, that's the importance of showing that hardship. I mean, I'm asking y'all, not just on this case, but every case, to really think about what it does to the overall code and setbacks and rules and regulations that we are all upholding. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Let's hear from the applicant. Oh, well, please come. Yes. There's still 6 minutes and 29 seconds of the opposition side, so please have a seat. Press the button. Identify yourself.
I'm Karen Scott again at 2840 Woodlawn. I just wanted to say something real quick, that we weren't called by any other homeowners. We didn't even know these people were here. So, I mean, we haven't been pulled in by another group. So I think that shows the board that there's a really opposition here, because my friend and I just decided we're going to write a letter and oppose this, and I just wanted to make that clear.
Like I said, the letter, I could tell usually when letters are coordinated. They kind of say the same things, they're written in the same ways. These are very different.
Right. Now, we did write a letter together.
Right.
Kathy Davidson and I did, yeah. So, okay, I just wanted to make that point.
Mr.
Let
King.
me ask you, how were you all aware of this hearing today? If you weren't invited to a meeting or whatever?
Yeah, I can kind of address that some, just in case we want to save our 5.5 minutes. So some of the immediate neighbors on Marlin contacted me. Shortly after I had a meeting with them, I was contacted by a few neighbors in the, if you go back to the main overview, some neighbors who are on Linmar and live in those homes there, they contacted me separately. And then this is the first I've heard of the Woodlawn ones. And I'll tell you, I have gotten a couple requests about getting involved in some variances by the applicants in other parts of my district, in Sullivan Park and things like that. And I've said, let's wait and see if there are a bunch of neighbors concerned, if I can help work something out or something like that. This is clearly 3 separate groups that have come to me. And I think it really was because the Cannons knew. They kind of pulled their immediate on Sharondale and Marlin together, and then clearly 2 separate organic groups came together, so.
I think I was just asking, and we'll ask our legal people here, there's a requirement of certain distance from the property that they're supposed to notify. Can you?
Mr. King, there is the requirement under the board rules and the Metro Code as well for a mailed notice to property owners within 600 feet. And I'm careful to specify property owners because in some instances, in some parts of Davidson County, you have apartments and rental units. So it may not go to the person living there, but instead somebody who owns it, even if they're out of town or out of state. In this instance, that was met. They sent out the mailed notices, and of course, the red BZA notice signs were put out as well for the original date, April 21, here before the BZA, and then, of course, we continued until today's date.
I just want to be sure that got on the record that everybody, legal notices are done.
Any other questions of the council lady?
Thank you.
Thank you for being here again. Let's hear from the applicant again, and the applicant has 12 minutes and 17 seconds.
I don't have anything else to say. At this point, we just want to thank everybody for their time. We'll probably just withdraw these plans and proceed per code with no input from any of them. Just do it by the book.
I have a question. I just want to make sure I understand the request. Are you seeking would the landscape buffer go on the entire jagged side of the lot? Except for the entire where it's marked 70 feet, 55 feet, 56.75, that 10-foot buffer, and you're seeking to decrease that to 5 the entire way?
Yes, we would. That's right.
Yes, ma'am.
So you had just said that you're requesting to withdraw this request and that you will.
Sure.
Is that a yes?
Yes, that's what I'm requesting.
Okay, you both agree to that?
Thank you, Chairman Davis, yes.
Okay, so John Michael, is there anything else that we need from them as far as that's concerned?
Just acknowledge the withdrawal of the appeal, and that will conclude case number 38.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
time.
Mr. Chairman, the next case that the board will hear is case number 43, involving the appellant Diana Townsend. And subject property at 106 Altaloma Road, up in the Madison neighborhood, just off Galton Pike. The request is for a variance to grant a building permit for the already built accessory structure. The variance would address side setback requirements and a variance from the square footage limitations for the accessory structure as well. The zoning map demonstrates here that we're in the R6 zoning district. You can see the proximity, the very, very large structure in the lower left-hand corner of this aerial is the Home Depot there in Madison, and the little red marker demonstrates where the subject residence is. The already existing accessory structure is located here where I'm indicating with cursor. The hand-drawn plan that was submitted is shown here. A couple of street-level photographs from a recent site visit shows the subject property just across the street on Altaloma Road there, seeing the front of the house as well as the accessory structure in its current condition. Then in the lower right-hand corner, the view across the street from 106 Altaloma. signs further down the street and across the street going down Altaloma back toward Gallatin, and in the lower right-hand corner going slightly uphill back toward the next intersection at Gleaves Road. A slightly closer view of the home and the accessory structure shown here. The appellant will have the opportunity to present their case. Is there anyone here in opposition to this particular case? With that, you'll have 15 minutes to present your case, Ms. Townsend. You may wish to reserve some bit of that time for rebuttal. And afterwards, any supporters for this appeal will have their chance to speak. Then once they've completed their remarks, the opponents will have their opportunity to speak as well. Ms. Townsend.
John Michael, before we get started, can you go over Metro Code's protocol on how we deal with someone who is built without a permit and what the power of this board is to deal with that?
Forgiveness instead of permission, I guess, is the theme there. Sometimes folks get a little notice from our colleagues in codes enforcement, hey, this was built without a permit or without the appropriate permit or built beyond the terms of the permit. And one of the ways that that has to be brought into compliance is to get the right permit, or if one was never obtained, to get one in the first place. In an instance like this, maybe what we see sometimes, Mr. Chairman, are cases where a 10-by-10 building accessory structure was permitted, but what gets built is actually larger than that. Sometimes with prefab units, they can be bigger, especially with metal buildings like such as these. What's required then is to come get it right. If what exists is beyond what would be permitted under the terms of the zoning code, then that necessarily means bringing it to the Board of Zoning Appeals in the event that a variance is needed either because of setbacks, size limitations, or in this case, both. So the board will review to determine whether or not there is in fact a hardship, same as the last case, that would justify incursion into the setbacks and exceeding the square footage limitations.
If we don't allow them to build in the setback and the building is 100% complete or mostly complete, then what happens?
It depends. The worst case scenario is that the law requires removal of the portions of the building that stand in violation of the Metropolitan Code of Laws. That typically goes through the environmental court process, subject to appeal to general sessions, subject to appeal to circuit court beyond that, and therefore they're going there forward in the court system to determine whether or not such removal, demolition, deconstruction would be required. That's kind of the worst case scenario, but the one that we all have to face if we get into a pickle like this.
What is the financial penalty for not having a permit and then later getting a permit after you find out that you need one?
Two valid answers to that question. One, the environmental court system, if an injunction is put in place by the court, typically is accompanied by a $50 per day fine for each day that the violation remains in place. The second part of that answer is when someone comes in to obtain the permit that's legally required, it's very likely that they will be hit with a triple fee. If, in fact, the fee for the building permit would have been, and I'll just make up a number, $1,000, the Codes Department has the authority to apply a triple fee in a scenario like that and require $3,000 for the permit fee instead, depending on the cost of construction in a project like this.
Okay, thank you.
Is there evidence that they had applied for any type of permit for this?
Forgive me, Mr. Taylor, I'd have to go back and review portions of the case file to have the
okay, that's fine.
particulars.
Okay, we're ready.
Good
Please
afternoon.
identify yourself and state your address.
Okay, my name is Diane Townsend, and I live at 106 Altaloma Road in Madison. It's right across from the Home Depot. We bought this property April 2013 as our retirement home. And at that time, this property was in a bad state of disrepair. And since buying it, we have put both our time and money into creating a home that we and our neighbors could be proud of. At the time that we bought the property, we had just purchased an RV and needed a garage for storage. We had that property surveyed, searched, and hired a contractor to build us a garage. After waiting quite a while, our contractor finally began the building. We assumed that since it took him a while to get back to us, he had been getting the necessary permits needed to complete the job. For the last 3 years, we have had no complaints from any of our neighbors, and the complaints we have received were compliments, complimenting on us how nice our property looks. The first we knew of any problems was when the codes inspector came to visit us because of a complaint. We assumed that this complaint was caused by a personal problem which arose between us and one set of neighbors several months ago, having to do nothing with the building. The inspector informed us that the garage is too near the property line and exceeds the square footage allowed. So we visited the codes department, and we were told that indeed this is the fact. Upon learning this, we tried to contact the contractor and found out that he had passed away. At this point, we had no recourse with him, so we're doing the only other thing we can and try to keep our garage.
Not that it's relevant at this point since he's no longer living, but was he a licensed contractor?
Yes, sir.
He was, okay.
Yep, we hired him, so yes, he was. We are requesting a variance of a 2-foot setback, a foot in reduction, and to build up to 1,200 square foot garage on the property, or which it's already built, we want to keep it. I have pictures of the property, and if not, we ask for your consideration in granting the allowances and that we need to keep our garage. Thank you.
Any questions?
I just want to make sure I understand. When was the structure built?
2013, October.
Okay, and did you have the same neighbors at that time?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and when did the current neighbors move in?
I want to say June of last year.
Okay, thank you.
I know it's 1,200 square feet, but do you know what the outside dimensions are of the garage?
30 by 40.
And it's 40 foot deep, 30 feet wide.
Yes, sir.
As you look at it.
30 on the front, 40
Thank
back.
you.
Any other questions?
So have you been told what's the maximum size garage you are allowed to have there?
700 square foot.
Okay.
So the first you knew anything was wrong is when someone from the codes department showed up and said there was no permit. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Well, not necessarily a permit. She said that we had complaints against us. And it was because the yard was junky and,
That yard that we see right now?
yes, sir. And I also have other pictures if you'd like to see those.
Similar to this, I mean, the pictures of what? The house or the structure or both?
Both, and
Okay,
also the backyard.
Yeah,
So
let's
this is the backyard.
see those.
Okay. These are like befores.
Do you have anything else to add? And as you heard from the previous case, you'll be able to come back after the opposition speaks, and you'll have 12 minutes and 57 seconds. Is that good?
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have you talked to any of the neighbors that are opposed to this thing?
No, they don't seem to want to get along and talk.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. You'll come back, and we're going to hear from the opposition right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please come forward and identify yourself. Have a seat at our table.
Good afternoon. My name is Donald R. Dowdell. I reside at 104 Altaloma Road. I am the neighbor next door. The reason that I am concerned about the size of the building and the closeness to my property is water drainage. The building drainage drains onto my property from the side of the rain that the gutters don't catch. Hits the side of that big building, runs down onto my backyard. Okay, the driveway in front of the building, when it rains, the contractor had laid the driveway in there at a pitch where it drained onto my property. And when it rains hard or he washes his vehicles, his water runs off of his driveway down because we live on a hill. So the drainage comes right down and right to my back door. Okay? I'm either going to have to invest money to install a drain to funnel that water away from the property and into the storm sewers where it belongs. Okay? I also think it's, that big a building is a threat in the case of a storm or severe weather of causing damage to my property and my home. And I just think that the code ought to be followed and the building put down to size and moved over what it's supposed to be from my property and just abide by the law, the laws that's written.
Thank you.
I am Leslie Dowdell, and I live next door to the neighbors at 106 Altaloma Road. I strongly oppose this building. First of all, we have cameras that we had put up all around the house. I invested a lot of money in situations because of this. The cameras, I am keeping on the house just because of the neighbors. He has to come over on our lot. I had a surveyor, Tom Bollinger, do a survey. And our lot is right where they put that, I don't know if you can see it, the fence, not the privacy fence we put up because of them. There's a fence right next to their concrete. It's they're right on the line. Their garage is not even 2 feet, which I've heard they said is not even a foot. If we plan on putting a garage in the back or doing anything ourselves, they are just too close to our line. And also, I got pictures on my phone that he's going to have to come over and work on that. There's drainage through there, there's weeds, there's problems. He's asked us to come over there. When they knew we didn't want him over there, my husband let him come over there and work on it. He will not be able to come on my lot if it stays like it does. He will be arrested. So this is a situation we've got to take in hand also, because he will not be able to do any upkeep, no maintenance on his side of the garage, which we'll need it in time. It may not quite now, besides the drainage problems. He'll have to address it sometime also. I oppose it because there's certain things you have to do to live in a neighborhood, and we've had to follow them, and he should have to. And if you let this go, then the next person should be able to get things dropped. And it's just not right, because we had to follow certain rules, and we went along with them. We had a very big storage unit brought on our property, and now we don't have it. We've got stuff sitting in our yard because of it, because we had to go along with code. There were certain restrictions on it, so we had to move it off. I lost a lot of money over this deal, several thousands of dollars, because I had to go along with certain rules, and I think they should have to too. There shouldn't be no lenience in this whatsoever because of hardship, because it was hardship for what we had to do. And we're still not over it. We've got tractors, we've got all kinds of stuff in our yard because of this. We've got another shed, but it's not big enough to hold all the stuff that we had to take out of that other shed. So we've got a mess in our backyard we're trying to work out. And yes, we are upset about this, very upset.
Have you had any conversations with your neighbor about this?
No, and I will never.
Never?
No.
Okay. Anything else?
How long have you all lived next door?
1 year today.
So the garage was there when you all bought the house?
They had put it in, they said sometime, you talk to them all the time, what did they say?
Hi, I'm Sarah Dowdell. I live at 104 Altaloma Road. They had that garage when we moved in next door. They said they had it built when the people, before she had bought the house, I guess the people had passed away, and that's when they did the garage. But my big thing, they have a flat screen TV with electricity and a plug-in under their pavilion. They have a lighthouse in their backyard hooked up to electricity. They have a water fountain in the yard with electricity with no permits. You know, and it just upsets me. They have all this stuff and no permits for it. You know, and I got pictures on here to prove the lighthouse is on there. Their camera in the front's on all the time. They have it on through the night. It's hooked up in the garage. They got a TV hooked up in their garage. Where's their permits for that? That's my only thing.
Oh, the list goes on. There's other things.
Let me ask each of you collectively and individually, however, you see any remedy other than taking the building down or whatever?
I don't know who's talking. Which one's talking?
No, if he can move it, I don't have any, move it away from my property. And further back, it should be set further back. That's an awful big building. I'm not saying tear it down, but I would like to, I think he should, an easy fix for the driveway and the drainage is to pour a curb. I'm an old concrete man, concrete contractor, so I know what could be done to solve that problem of the drainage on my property. And all it would take is a curb poured on the side of the driveway to force the water to the street. The building, I have no problems with it, except it's too close to my property and my home.
Any other questions?
Oh, was
Okay.
the driveway there also when you moved in?
Yes.
Yes.
And how long were you living there before it became a problem?
We started getting in all the rain. I sat there and watched it, and I just thought, man, I can't have this. I had to pull. We had a little bit of rock because we don't have a concrete driveway. We just bought the home and we're still fixing it. But, all the water would puddle right there where, that's my white Camaro. That my side of my house was always wet, the ground, my back door area was always wet.
Comes in the back door.
It runs around the front of my house. There's the water just runs to my property.
So,
And
but you said your property is downhill of this property, correct?
yes. But when the contractor made it and constructed it, he brought that property up. He had to get it level. The contractor was negligent.
So you said a minute ago, you don't really have a problem with the garage other than it's too close to your property, but it was, when you bought your property, you knew where the garage was, and so that was there, and the water issue, you said, you would, if the driveway, and I don't think they're asking for a driveway variance, but you said if they could have a plan for the water, that would help solve some of the issues. I mean, clearly,
Yes. I'm either going to have to put out the expense to control the water, which I don't feel I should have to, because I didn't contract the concrete to dump over on my property. The side of the building, the way it's designed, the building comes down, then it's on a dirt slope, okay? It's probably a foot off of my ground. So the water that hits the building, that's a big building, hits that side of that building and runs onto my property. And if that building was moved over, if it was built at its proper thing, variance, probably wouldn't have had a problem. But since the building is so close to my property, and he's not allowed on our property, I can't take care of I'm not going to take care of his foot.
I got a picture of it if you want to
On-
see it.
So my advice, or what I want, is what I think should happen, is the law should be followed, building should be
Amen.
moved over, and the drainage and water problems should be taken off of my back.
So, were you saying that the water comes in your house?
It runs around I live in a brick home with a foundation, okay? It runs up against the foundation, and then the way the water runs is around the house, okay? And underneath the front porch, it's hard to explain.
It
but
comes in our garage. Our garage is on that end. It
Yeah.
comes in the back door and
It leaks-
and
it leaks in
underneath
our garage.
the front of the garage.
So have you had any water damage?
No.
No, we just have to take care of it all the time.
Any other questions?
I'd like for you to explain to me what you were talking about. You didn't have enough room to store your own equipment in your backyard now. Did I miss something?
I had purchased a 14 by 30 building. I had set it back in there right behind that fence, okay, close to George's, I was 5 foot because I went after I was notified that I'd have to have a building permit for it. Okay, I bought it. It's the one that's the mobile building that they bring to you, okay? They said all I needed to do was set it on blocks. I had to furnish the blocks, okay? I didn't think anything about it, so that's what I did. I brought it in. I had it set up on blocks. Well, I think the neighbor through hearsay thought it was too close to his building, okay? He was afraid of fire, whatever. So I took the building when I got the building permit, and I said, okay. And I moved the building back to the back corner of my property and set it back on blocks, okay? I called the code, and I said, come out and do an inspection. They wanted a footer inspection and all that. Well, the footer inspection come out and said, I can't approve it because you're 20 square foot over the limit. He said anything over 400 square foot has to be put on a footer. My building was 420 square feet. I said, sir, I don't know how I can do that. And he said, well, you're the one that signed the paper, said that you knew what you were doing, and if you don't know how to do it, then you hire yourself an engineer. And I said, well, how long do I have to do this? And this was in January. He said, you have 90 days to make a big improvement. Rain, snow, cold weather. I couldn't comply with his rulings in the zoning. So I sold the building at a loss to comply with the law. I don't have a building anymore that I was going to use as storage and a sitting room for playing music, things like that. So if I'm not allowed 20 square feet on a building I bought and was going to utilize, he ought to have to follow the law and do the same thing.
Okay, any other questions? Do you have anything else to add?
Yes.
Okay.
If this isn't settled in here, which I hope it does, attorney will be the next step.
As you know, you have a right to hire an independent attorney and appeal any decision of this board to Chancery Court.
Do you have
Okay.
some more photographs you want to show us?
Yeah.
They're on it.
The ones of the yard.
How do we deal with phone photographs, John Michael?
Well,
You're more than welcome to look at them on for identification basis. If we want to include them as part of the record, we'll need to have something tangible to place in the record, or at least an electronic file submitted that we can include in the record in the event of an appeal.
well, it don't matter.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. Y'all can look at them.
Okay.
No, I'm just going to show the sides that we're going to have to take care of.
Yeah, you're free to come up here and show us these pictures.
It's up on a hill. There's his garage, and his boundaries about right in.
Is this the structure that you were just talking about?
Huh?
Is this the structure, the temporary structure you were just talking
No.
about?
This is what he would have to take care of, and he can't because he's on my land when he steps. Is that a slant? He puts the dirt in a slant. He'd have to stand up on that. There's no way he could walk along there to take care of his property.
Okay. And as you said, you don't want him on your property.
No, I got cameras all over that. He ain't gonna step foot. I've already called the police and told them, and they told me first step, he steps foot on my property, he's arrested.
If I could just step in briefly, because y'all looked at the pictures on her phone, I would ask that you email those so that we can make them a part of the record. So in the event of an appeal, there's a record of everything y'all considered. So if you could get the,
This shows right here where Todd,
Okay. Ma'am, do you understand that the photo that you just showed?
that's his marker. Look
Yes,
how close.
but this photo with this car and the fence, can you email to John Michael? He'll tell you where to send it.
I'm sorry.
Do you have anything else to add?
They can give you the address.
No. Okay. Thank you. We're going to hear from the opposition, the applicant again.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yes. We're going to hear from the applicant now.
Okay.
couple of things. Mr. Dowdell was talking about the water runoff. He had spoke to us about that. And what we did, in one of those pictures that you have, you can see the side of the garage. We ran gutter pipe from there all the way back to the back of the property to where it would not run on his property in the back.
I know this doesn't have anything to do with the building, but they raised it. What about the driveway runoff that they claim?
I have no idea because we get flooded. Up on our side up here, there are 2 more houses, and it is up elevated. The house in the corner, the next house right there, and we get flooded out ourselves. So when that comes down through there, the water just flows straight on down through.
What else, ma'am?
They were talking about the building. Their little building, I guess, if they call it a storage shed. Sarah, the lady that was here, her husband and her kids lived in this building out back.
I don't think that's relevant to what we're saying about your building and the
Okay, well, I thought
being
I
in the
could
setback. Okay.
rebuttal, maybe.
Well, I mean, you could say it, sure.
Okay, well, okay, that's fine then.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, say.
We had the property surveyed,
Oh, you did? Now that's good. Okay.
and we are not on their property at all.
But you're still.
We're still too close
Yes.
for what code said, but we're
By about how much are you too close?
2 foot.
According to the survey, you're 2 foot.
No, I'm a foot too close.
You're a foot too close.
Foot too close, but I'm asking for the 2-foot variance.
Right. How close is the building to the property line?
By the survey.
2 foot.
So do you have to get on their property to maintain your building at all?
No, sir, I have 2 foot that I could walk through there.
You don't have to get on their property?
No, sir. We can walk right beside the garage right there, straight back.
So 2 feet is about as wide as that table that you're sitting at right now, maybe a
No.
little bit wider. No, the other way,
Oh, yes, sir.
width-wise, yeah.
Probably about this big.
What are your plans if we deny the variance?
Well, I guess I'll have to tear half of the building down, leave half standing and park my RV on the concrete. And people will just have to look at the RV instead of the side of the building.
Any other questions? Do you have anything else to add, ma'am?
No, sir, but just ask for your consideration in this problem.
So is there no other solution for you to tear down half the building? Could you move this building as they suggested?
No, sir, it's easier to tear it down
Okay,
than to move it.
thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to close the public hearing and time for discussion.
I almost asked if they had considered, offering to buy the extra foot from the neighbors, but I didn't think that would go anywhere, so.
I think since they don't speak, that's probably unlikely. These are the kind of cases that you read about in law school that, property line disputes, somebody built too close, and usually there's bad blood, and here we are. So obviously, it's not built where it should be. This board has the power. They didn't have a permit. As you heard, the contractor has since deceased, who was licensed. So now we get to kind of sort this out. We do have the power to let them keep the building there. We have the power to say you can't, and it's got to be moved or torn down, that part that encroaches.
Well, I do think the building has been there since 2013. I'm unclear if the driveway was poured at that same time. We've all seen the photographs that show what this house looked like when they purchased it, and my opinion is it's certainly a much more attractive property now. and appears to be well-maintained. I'm a little unclear if tearing down the building fixes the neighbor's problems of water drainage. Maybe maybe it affects the water that bounces off the building onto the property, but really, it doesn't put them in a much better situation if the building is gone. They just have the law complied with, in their words. And I'm not sure that that's the sole purpose for doing this when the property was purchased with full knowledge of what the driveway looked like, of what the structure looked like, with the idea that what water runoff could be. It's a sloping street. They're in the middle of a sloping street, both of these properties. So I'm a little hesitant to require somebody to tear down a structure under those circumstances.
And as far as the water runoff goes, there's no evidence. I mean, one can make assumptions, but there's no evidence that the net water runoff has changed. And
Right.
it certainly hasn't changed since the property was bought.
Right.
And most people don't realize, and projects, they were talking about it in the previous project, they were worried about the water runoff from the project. Well, all of that is regulated as well, and it's not for us to decide, but it's, as long as you're not changing, if there's water going from your property to your neighbor's property and you build something, that water still has to move to that. You have to continue the flow as it was. So there's no evidence that's been offered that it's been altered in any way. And I don't know that removing the building, I don't think that's really the issue.
Well, I mean, that's what we have to decide. It's either if we let them have this, the building stays where it is, but if we don't let them have this variance after the fact, then they either have to move, or she said, it's easier just to tear down half of it. So that's where we are.
If they had come, they would have had to have come before the board for the variance in the
Yes,
size and the
they would
setback,
have.
before they would have gotten a permit. And there doesn't appear to me to be a hardship at all on this land that we would have given them the variance for the size or the setback. So I look at it that way, and I would actually think they should abide by the code.
I don't think I could guess what I would do or would have done had they asked for a variance, but I probably know what I would or would not have done, but I wouldn't make that a part of my decision today. I think unfortunately I see a little bit of, I couldn't do it, so I don't think you can. It's sad when neighbors can't get along, Should be a solution here rather than animosity toward one another. Don't know how long they're going to live beside each other, but I think I know which way I'd vote. I think I'd be hard-pressed to make her tear the building down, especially since the other people bought the property after this building was already there. They knew the conditions.
We do have I think anytime there's a case of asking for forgiveness rather than permission, there's something about that just rubs a board like ours the wrong way, because it's just not the order of things that things are supposed to happen. And so there's an aspect of that bothers me, which is why we ask for testimony of how did it happen? Did you just do it? Did you hire somebody? What happened? And the testimony was, and it wasn't disputed. I don't know that there was any way it could have been disputed, but it was that, no, there was a contractor hired, and they built it assuming that they had the permits. And so that just puts it in a really tough situation. I don't know if it would be approved if it had just come before us, and like I said, I'm not sure. I understand and respect that point of view, and I don't know what that answer would be. I would say it would be a stretch to find the hardship for that. But that said, I still am struggling with a neighbor that kind of knew what he was getting when he moved in. If it had been a neighbor and this had happened while they both had been there and the environment changed. But nothing changed. I mean, it was, when you bought the house, you knew what you were getting next door. And so there's an aspect of that I think is important to me. So I think it's a tough one. It seems like a waste to have to tear something down. And it seems really unfortunate that it seems to be based on the fact that the neighbors just don't get along.
Anyone care to make a motion? Or we can still discuss this.
What makes it also tough is the fact that the contractor is deceased. Well, I know what I would have done had he not been. Can't do that now.
That's why I asked if it was licensed, and the applicant said they was. And of course, viewers of Channel 3, you can go to the state website that license contractors and see if the person that you're about to give some money to is actually licensed and in good standing. So, board, any motions? What do we think? Well, this is, like I said, one of these kind of law school-like cases because it involves two feuding parties, a deceased contractor, and a big building that was built without a permit that's already there. But that being said, it's a hard case, but I will take a stab at a motion, actually, that I move that we grant the permit to build this accessory structure into the side setback with the variance as it's already existing, and that we approve it given that the building is already built. It was there when the neighboring property owner bought their property, and this board, it's really hard. It's almost impractical to move, and I think it would be unfeasible just to tear down half. Okay, motion's been made.
Before you go, I think there's more than one violation there. Not only the closeness of the building, but the size of the building is also needs to be addressed.
Okay, so.
I believe.
Yes, the size of the structure too. Yes, a variance in the square footage. You're right, Mr. King. So I'd like to add to my motion that also grant them the variance in the square footage limitation of their accessory structure.
I'll second as amended.
Okay.
And I would like to offer, maybe it's a point of clarification, maybe it's a friendly amendment, but that we find that the hardship is the, state that it's the extraordinary condition of this particular situation. So we do have to find a hardship, I believe. And in the past, when we've, and maybe we don't.
I'll take, so the extraordinary what of this situation?
The extraordinary circumstances of this situation with the fact that
the building is built.
Is built, and the contractor
is dead. Okay, yeah, okay. I'll take that as a friendly amendment that, so the hardship is the building is built, the person that was responsible for doing the building is deceased, and that is the kind of unusual and hardship situations, that she doesn't have redress with the contractor. Normally you would if he was still living, but she doesn't.
And it was not concealed from the next door neighbor at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't concealed. It was very visible, and there's no evidence in the record that, the applicant knew that the contractor did not get a permit or wasn't following code. Is that acceptable? Okay. We have our new motion. It's been properly seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so it's 6 to 1, and it passes.
Mr. Chairman, the next case that will be heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals today is case number 2016-046, involving the appellant, David Farrow, and the property at 113 Old Hickory Boulevard in Madison, property owned by Rodney and Rebecca Jarvis. They're requesting a variance from setback requirements and a variance from residential zone distance requirements for LED signage in the Commercial Services District. The zoning map demonstrates here, and I want to take a moment with this, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the stretch along OHB that sits just above the real property developed along the lower portion that is also called Old Hickory Boulevard, just beneath Gallatin Pike there. You'll get a better sense from the overhead. Site plan has been submitted, has been shared by the sign company that proposes to build out the signage at issue and in question in this case. The face of the building shown in the upper left-hand corner demonstrates the approximate area where such signage could be placed. The lower right-hand shows the view across the street from this business location. The upper left-hand photo here is taken from Old Hickory Boulevard. You'll notice the slightly unusually wide median giving way to an alley, giving way to the back of the subject building, and then a shot down the aforementioned alley there in the lower right-hand corner. This is the view up and down Old Hickory Boulevard, the upper left-hand going back to the interstate, and on the lower right, further outbound. The appellant is present today. Should come forward at this time, please, represented by one of his contractors. Are there opponents to this case present today? If there is no opposition present today, then the appellant will have 10 minutes to present his case. Feel free to
John,
proceed.
can you point out on, or show the map, just how close residential?
I'm afraid that's as wide a shot as I have on this
Well,
one.
or even, where does the residential start that causes this to be a problem?
I'm going to invite the appellant to chime in on this shortly, but I believe it's across Gallatin.
No, the closest residential would be directly across the street is Witt's. Then there's an insurance agency, so the closest residential would be two parcels to the right.
Okay.
Would be the closest residential.
Are you saying that grassy area in the lower right corner of the image?
That's a market. The block building with the white back, that's a market, discount tobacco
On the
market.
same street, is there residential, or do you have to go over another street?
There is residential on Old Hickory Boulevard, yes,
Okay,
sir.
that's what we wanted to know, but it's down from the market.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. The hardship is.
If you introduce yourself by
Oh,
name and
sorry.
address.
Rodney Jarvis, Jarvis Signs. I own the building at 113 Old Hickory Boulevard East. The hardship that we're facing is just, the building is so packed in there. We have about 4.5 parking spots up front. And in the back, we're down from Old Hickory Boulevard about 10 or 15 feet. If John Michael can show that one slide. It's the building is lower. The left picture, you're standing on Old Hickory Boulevard, so you can see where it's probably 10 or 15 feet below Old Hickory Boulevard to the alley down there. So the sign placement, the setback is 20 feet. We don't have anywhere to put a sign. If I put a sign in the alley, I can't have a dumpster. And where we have had to put it, we have a creek running under our building, literally a full-blown creek. And so I have about a 2-foot square that, and I know you think I'm crazy, but there's it's a creek running under the building. So we have a 2-foot square to put this in.
And I noticed on the first map, there was a floodplain across the street, so I imagine that's part of the creek.
Correct. And it's nowhere identified by Metro Water or acknowledged by Metro Water, but I have pictures. We had to redo the dock because all the rebar and steel structure underneath there has rusted away and deteriorated from all the water. So that's what started this whole process. The dock, we had an engineer look at it, it was not, you couldn't use it. So we had to jackhammer that, remove all the concrete and steel, start over, and that's what started this ball rolling.
So tell me where the sign is going. Is it going in the back of the building or the front of the building?
The back.
Okay.
So if you see the brown awning and you see the black pole,
Right.
that's the new pole that I've already stood because I had to pour a dock because I had an open hole there. I mean, and when
So
I
it's
say
not going on the other side of the alley, it's going on your side of the alley,
it's going,
close to your building?
it's going 7 inches off my building.
And it's to advertise your business?
Yes, sir. On-premise sign.
How much taller is it than the roof?
Probably 13 feet maybe.
13 feet higher than the roof?
Yeah, that's,
So it would be visible by the, from the houses that are on Gallatin Road?
I don't know. I mean, I don't,
How tall is the one in the front?
the sign in the front, probably 20 feet.
So it's 10 feet, the global sign, is that 20 feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so 10 feet higher than that.
No, it's not 10 feet higher than that.
Is it the pole we see, the empty pole there? Is that your pole?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Go back to the empty pole next to the billboard.
Light, the electric
Yeah,
thing, yeah.
No, I don't, no, that can't,
that's not your pole?
I don't know that angle. That would probably, I don't know. That angle doesn't look right. It looks like my pole would be more to the left because he's shooting at an angle there.
Can we see the back of the building again, please? Yeah. So this is it down here by the awning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's your pole that's by the
That's,
dock?
yes.
Okay, it
And
looks
you, I
like,
mean, you can see in the background,
oh, there's another, maybe,
3 more buildings down, there's a
Another
billboard.
empty.
I mean, so it's not like it's a residential area. There's a billboard, 3 more businesses down.
yeah.
So, hope I'm not backpedaling here too much, but the sign that's on the front is being replaced also, and you're adding a sign in the back, or you're relocating the sign that's in front?
No, sir, the sign in the front is a static sign. It's just a static sign. I wanted to put an LED on the back.
What's the reason for the LED sign?
We're a sign company, we sell signs, just to promote our
Advertise your
business and
business.
advertise what
So
we
the-
can do and what we do.
The green sign in front belongs to your neighbor?
Sure, and it's on the property line. It looks, those people come into our business all day long looking for that place, but it's on the line. We have 4 parking spots out front.
And you can't put the LED sign at the front because of, it would be more in the setback? Is the
I can't
setback?
put the LED sign in the front because if I dig a hole on the left, I'm taking a parking spot. If I dig it on the right where I could potentially take a parking spot, there's a 20-foot creek there that I can't dig into because I would be blocking the creek.
So,
I would be damming the creek up.
So you'd rather, sorry, David, you'd rather have it on the front, but the creek is in the way? So in a way, that's your hardship? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if I put it in the front, I would literally be putting a 3-foot case on in a 20-foot creek.
But if there was no creek, you would be allowed to put it on the front of the building, the LED sign?
I can't answer codes, but I could look at that as an option. But
so part of my confusion is in our package, we have this picture where it's got your sign next to the Parts House sign.
right,
And on what was on the screen, it said global or something. That sign is existing?
we have occupied this building for 18 years, we just were able to purchase a new building on Madison Street. So we're leasing this building out to a company called Global Advertising. What they do is they sell LED signs. So we've leased the building to them, and we've moved to 310 Madison Street.
Okay, so, but you're not moving into this building. What you're, the sign that I'm looking at now on the screen where it says Global, that's no longer your sign?
That is our sign, but that's the company I'm leasing the building to.
I mean, you're not using that sign. That can't be the LED sign.
No,
Or
it
the-
can't be an LED sign. It's a static sign.
Okay, because in our package, it says replace with EMC, and it's got that sign circled. That's why I'm,
That would be a misnote. It would be the sign on the back that we need an EMC,
okay,
digital display.
that's helpful.
Sorry.
So this isn't for your business, this is for a business that you're leasing the company to?
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm not, and so the sign that we saw in the front of the building, those are all perfectly legit to codes, right? So those are signs that you're allowed to have, that you can,
Well, the parts house has nothing to do with me, so, but we have a permit for the 4x8 sign that says Global. We pulled a permit for it 2 months ago.
But that global sign has nothing to do with this case.
No,
no, I mean, it goes to, to the hardship and the necessity of the sign, I think. So you're saying that global sign can't be seen from Old Hickory?
no, sir.
You're not concerned that the LED sign on the back of that building, which would be the Old Hickory Boulevard, a very high traffic area
Yes, sir.
coming down from that, is that going to be a hindrance to the traffic?
It wasn't a hindrance at Cornerstone Church up on Old Hickory Boulevard when they just did a 4x10 about 6 months ago with residential directly across the street from them. So I don't see how it can be a hindrance at this intersection is one of the top 10 intersections for busyness, Gallatin Road and Old Hickory Boulevard. I mean, it can't be any more of a hindrance than it is at the off-ramp to Old Hickory Boulevard.
Well, churches fall into different categories because of some state legislation regarding religious institutions on what we're really allowed to regulate or not, so.
But they still abut right to residential, which I think
Let
is,
me rephrase, more hazardous than a hindrance, I would put it that way, traffic-wise.
it has a program in it at night. It dims down, so it's not as bright as it is during the day. That's written into the program of the sign. So it dims down at night to 50%. If it's a light issue that would be the hindrance. And then you have to follow Metro Code where you hold it for 8 seconds. So it's not scrolling.
Well, he's exactly right. The sign for the church under a whole different set of rules than this one is, so.
Any other questions?
No, I really wish that I knew the answer, or you had the answer to whether or not any of
Yes,
the
we will.
residences would see the sign on the back of your building.
I think the first few houses on Old Hickory Boulevard are abandoned or not occupied would be probably the correct word. I mean, Jim Stevens used to own them, so I think they're abandoned or not being lived in. So you've got the Madison Funeral Home. I don't see how you could, the closest residential is, it's a half mile down the road, there's some apartments.
So what's your real, I know you said you're in the sign business, but what's the real purpose of wanting this LED sign as opposed to a normal sign? Because there's regulation, as you know, related to LED signs in residential areas.
that's what we do. We sell LED signs, and this company in particular really focuses on LED signs. That's their whole business. So they sell LED signs to businesses. They sell them to not movie stars, but the country music stars where they lease them and put them out on tours. So that's their business, LEDs.
Are, in this image that we're looking at now, these buildings that are actually touching, are those individual properties, or is it one property with?
They, according to tax records, and they are individual parcels,
Okay.
which is,
So there's,
so I own two parcels, 113 and 115, and then the buildings, they all touch. So there's no room between the buildings.
so there's actually nowhere on your property that you can meet the 500-foot separation?
No. And on the back, the alley is counted as public right, or, you know, it's the setback, we're probably 40 to 50 feet from Old Hickory Boulevard. But the problem is we're not meeting the 20-foot setback.
From which, I'm
From Old Hickory
confused.
Boulevard in the back.
What do you mean by the back? The closest to the intersection?
The closest to where Old Hickory Boulevard is like 6 lanes wide.
Okay.
From that edge of that curb to the back of the building is probably 50 feet.
And
But
that's where you're having trouble with the setback?
I can't meet the 20-foot setback because the 20-foot setback starts at the alley. They're counting the alley as public right-of-way. And it's literally an alley for our trash man to come down and grab our dumpster. And for, I mean, it's just, it is what it is. It's an alley. I'm sorry.
It's just confusing because on the map that we were seeing before, the street that your building fronts is also called Old Hickory.
Welcome
Old
to my world.
As opposed to the many other Old Hickories in Nashville.
Yes, it's Old Hickory Boulevard East in front and Old Hickory Boulevard in the back.
Okay.
Anything else to add? Do you have anything else on your part? Any other questions?
The reason for me, for putting up the pole, I went ahead and did that because I have engineer's plans where it ties into the dock that I poured. We put the steel structure across there, tied the pole into that.
And you had to deal with the creek, too.
I mean, yes, sir. I had to do all that to get it closed in. So I haven't put the sign up in lieu of this, but I had to get the pole in to get it decked over, just as a safety.
But you can put a static sign there legally, right?
I don't, like I said, I don't know. I would not assume anything. I don't know. There was a static sign there before. Come on, Dan.
I'm David Farah. I'm the one that applied for the permit. Hey, David, come to the microphone. Okay, sure. Just so that you'll know, sure. Speak? Right, okay. Again, David Farah, and I work with Rodney. Just to clear up this business with regard to the global sign out front, we had originally applied and had talked about putting an LED sign in the front of the building. We could not do that because of the height requirement, okay? And it would have been blocked by the appliance sign, the green sign that you see in that picture there. The height requirement would have kept us from putting the LED there. So we decided to move it to the back of the building. You have to understand that because of the proximity of the buildings and because of the alleyway in which it is, there is a slope there from Old Hickory Boulevard down that's a good maybe 30 to 40 degree banking that comes down through there. The idea of an LED sign there and the presentation on behalf of the new tenant there is more beneficial in the back of the building than it would be in the front of the building, if that makes sense. There are a number of signs that are on the back side of the alley. Two of them are housed with the appliance company. The State Farm agent there also has a sign on the back there. I believe, if I'm correct, Lamar Outdoor Advertising has a billboard that is positioned back there as well. Directly across Old Hickory Boulevard at the intersection there is the Madison Church of Christ. Now, they in fact also, and again, I'm well aware of the fact that the rules are different for the churches, but they also have an LED sign that is positioned there as well. Are we asking for something out of the ordinary? I don't think so. Is this going to be beneficial to that particular tenant? Yes, I believe it will be. Is it going to distract from the area and its overall appearance? I don't believe so. Again, we're asking the board to consider our request for this LED sign at the back of the building.
Do you know if that LED sign would be seen by any of the residential zoned areas?
It's going to be very doubtful because, as Roddy had indicated, as you move up Old Hickory Boulevard, Old Hickory Boulevard, and you pass that market, there are in fact a couple of old abandoned properties that are there. I don't think there's any residential that is going to be, no, I really don't think so, simply because of the way the sign is going to be oriented toward Gallatin Road, back toward Old Hickory Boulevard. I don't believe that would be the case.
Do you know, you're asking for a residential distance variance, and I think your application does say.
What we've got there, Mr. Taylor.
So it's a 500-foot requirement, and you have 360.
That is correct.
Okay.
Because of the way that the alley is positioned and because of the slope coming down Old Hickory Boulevard, that's the reason for our request for the variance.
Yeah, and personally, I don't have much of a problem with the sign in the back, and I understand, I think the hardship there. What I'm struggling with is the LED part, so that's why I was asking, can you see it? I mean, the only time I know that we've given that distance requirement was when the residential area was a cemetery, so well, that's not going to, it might disturb people visiting their loved ones, but
correct.
I don't think it's going to disturb anybody
No.
that's in the cemetery.
No, I don't think so. And of course, being born and raised here in Nashville, things have changed so much, and the LED sign is in its glory day right now, and everybody is moving toward LED. Your parking lots are moving toward LED lighting, and it's just a great presentation and a thing that I think are going to have to accept for the future, because that's going to be the wave. I mean, your billboards are going that route now. Some people like them, some people don't, but they do make for a great presentation, and certainly they are eye-catching. More so when traffic is stopped right there on Old Hickory Boulevard in the morning and backed all the way up to Lakewood. But again, we ask you to consider our request.
Is the sign double-faced?
It is, Mr. Harper.
And so if we were to grant an LED sign, and let's just say with the condition that it was only to advertise the building in that physical spot, that wouldn't be an issue?
No. No, sir.
So that it could never be used as a billboard or as,
Oh, absolutely. No, it would be an on-premise sign specifically for that business.
And they're going to flash the time and temperature.
Okay. Anything else to add?
No, sir.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, and we are going to close the public hearing.
Thank you for your time, committee.
Sign case here from a sign company.
Well,
Any
like I said,
thoughts?
I mean, the sign in the back, I understand given, I think, a fairly unusual situation of being on two roads, being in the middle of two roads that have the exact same name, although very slight variation. I definitely understand the need for that business in that intersection to have something that says, hey, here we are. I understand the hardship about the creek, and frankly, having a sign in that back alley is probably better than having it in the front, because it's with parking and for all the reasons they gave. I understand the hardship. I believe the hardship. The LED issue, I do recall that the last time that we had a case was about the same distance, 350 feet-ish, instead of 500, and the nearest residential was a cemetery. Now here, it most likely, based on the testimony, is a rapidly changing residential zone that probably hits it at the 360 feet. And we certainly don't have any neighbors here opposing, but that is a little boundary pushing for me, and I'm still kind of thinking about the LED piece of it.
Okay. Anyone else? What do we think?
I do just have a question. What are the variations? It says there's a 500-foot minimum at a 20-foot height. How does that change? I mean, I don't know what the.
Yeah, Ms. Chappell, you're kind of heading the right direction there. Under the zoning code, the sign prohibitions for, and we're talking about LED here, but really it's any digital display that changes messages. So LED obviously fits in that description. So 1732-050, subsection G as in Gerard, gets into the whole business of defining the difference between height to distance ratio. So the example given, letter of the law in subsection B under G there is, for example, a sign between 5 and 6 feet in height shall not be less than 150 feet from any agriculturally or residentially zoned property. We rarely see the agricultural example, almost always residential in these cases. So it's just kind of a ratio that's teased out by our staff when they do the examination. And I'm sorry I didn't even stop to think about running a few example numbers here for the board today, but that's what's handled by our zoning examiners upon application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well,
Anyone want to make a motion?
Okay, I was just about to say I'm inclined to find that it's acceptable, but I'll try to do a motion. I would move that they meet the requirements for a variance in the 20-foot setback due to the creek under the property and the dual-named streets on either side of the property. And I would find that it is appropriate to allow the reduction in the 500 minimum foot distance for the LED sign, given that we believe we have abandoned properties as the closest residential setting. That we grant.
What
the
about
application.
the LED? I mean, my friendly amendment would be, the code just speaks on what this property is zoned for. The cemetery was a unique structure. I just think you say, it has minimal impact on neighboring residential properties. And our other friendly amendment would be to limit the use of the LED sign to on-site businesses and, of course, the time and temperature.
I think that's appropriate amendment.
Okay. Then with that, I will second that. Motion's been made and properly seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0.
Mr. Chairman, the next case that will be heard by the board is case number 2016-047, property located at 1017 Birchwood Avenue. Mr. Stratton is present with us. If you'd come forward to present your case. The request is for a variance from side and rear setback requirements in the R6 district in order to build an addition to an existing accessory structure. The zoning map here demonstrates the area just off of Gallatin in East Nashville, all pretty much zoned R6. The site plan that's been submitted, and forgive me, I had trouble loading up the aerial for your presentation on this one, but shows the plan there on Birchwood as presented by the appellant. The first photo shown here from street level at least gives you an idea of where the accessory structure is, how it's oriented relative to the primary structure, and the approximate distance here from the sidewalk. The view up and down Birchwood. And then a little step back for the primary structure there shown in the upper left-hand corner, appropriate signage placed in the yard, and then the view across the street from the subject property at 1017 Birchwood. Mr. Stratton, are there any opponents here for this case? Seeing none, Mr. Stratton, you'll have 10 minutes to present your case and make your request.
Good afternoon. My name is Shane Stratton. I live at 1017 Birchwood, Nashville, Tennessee, 37216. I have been approved for the 10 by 25 variance. However, I am looking for a 12-foot wide on the side. So I would actually have a 3-foot setback on the right side. Kind of where you see where the gray car is located, it would be back in the back of that. And really, I'm fine with the 25-foot deep. The depth of the garage expansion, I'm just looking for 12-foot wide, if that's feasible.
With apologies, Mr. Chairman, and to the appellant, Mr. Stratton, I failed to clarify. What had previously been recommended for consent was what we had shown in our records as a 10 by 25 structure. It is recommended for consent today. However, fortunately, Mr. Stratton clarified that this is actually a request for a 12 by 25, not a 10 by 25. Since that's not what was specifically reviewed during the consent review, we thought it best to bring it to the board. So as I understand it, Mr. Stratton, an identical request just for 2 more feet than was otherwise contemplated in the original.
Yes, sir.
And what is the side setback?
I believe 5 feet.
So, but now you're going to be 3 by adding 2 more feet. So why were you asking for a side setback before?
The number was filled in incorrectly.
And then how far are you going to be? I mean, what's the rear setback is it 20 now, or what's the rear setback?
I'm not sure.
Does anybody know the rear setback?
The case file says that our 20-foot rear setback is required. They're seeking 10 with this project. And of course, 5 is the side setback, requesting 3, again, per the original
And
application.
so the existing garage already has a variance? The existing garage is 10 foot?
That was there when I purchased the property about 4 years ago.
And so tell me what's the reason that you're going to the property line instead of to the middle of your yard? Why are you building on the right side instead of the left side?
Yes, sir. As you're looking at it, I'll be building to the right.
But why are you building to the right instead of the left?
I have a fence going that way. Additionally, it's too narrow to cut through on the left.
So is this an extra bay of parking? Is that
Yes,
what it
sir.
is? Okay.
Yes. It would be
So you couldn't
additional-
get a car into the left, is what you're saying?
Correct. Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay.
Yes, it would be an additional bay for a vehicle.
Are you tearing down the current structure, or are you just adding on to the current structure?
Just adding on to it. And it would match the look of the existing structure.
Did you build or remodel that existing structure?
That was currently there, but I did remodel the exterior of the house, just added cedar shake and changed the paint color.
Okay, no, that looks good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, anything else to add?
No, sir.
Okay, let's close the public hearing. As John Michael mentioned, this was on consent for certain dimensions, and when we found out it was different, that's why we pulled it off consent. So, discussion. Okay, anyone have any objections to this? Any comments from our?
I do want to ask a question on board here. I guess this is strictly for non-residential use. I mean, it won't be like an apartment back there, correct?
That is not allowed in these accessory structures. So, any other objections? Would you like to make a motion? Okay, any other discussions from our other architect?
Well, yeah, I see now why he was diligent about getting the 12 feet instead of the 10 feet, obviously, because he needs the 12 feet for the car, and that also answers the question of why it can't go to the left, which does speak to a site limitation. I'm not exactly sure how we would word that, but given the use of this addition, it seems like that is the only place it can go.
So that would be the hardship that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve case number 1017 Birchwood Avenue, requesting a variance from the side and rear setback requirements in the RS district for this, in addition to the existing accessory structure, hardship given that this was the only place it could be added onto for this and the car use. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion's been made, properly seconded. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0. Good luck.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next case.
Mr. Chairman, the final case that the board will hear today is case number 2016-048 for property at 431 Old Hickory Boulevard. That's the actual Old Hickory Boulevard, not side Old Hickory Boulevard, rear Old Hickory Boulevard, or Old Hickory Boulevard. The appellant, Mike Holloway, on behalf of the property owner, McFerrin Missionary Baptist Church, has provided an Item A appeal of the zoning staff's decision to deny an LED message board sign in the RS20 district. Anticipating the first question the board will have, this, of course, is a church which enjoys different guidance under the Tennessee RFRA laws, RFRA, as well as the federal RLUIPA laws with regard to land use for religious institutions. The appellants allege that the board will have jurisdiction under the traditional Item A designation 1740-180 subsection A. The appellants, if they would come forward at this time, may present their case. Is there anyone here in opposition to case number 48? Seeing none, you will have 10 minutes to present your case to the board.
My name is Mike Holloway. I'm here representing McFerrin Missionary Baptist Church. We're at 431 West Old Hickory Boulevard. As previously stated, there are some state and federal laws that cover that, but we've gone what I feel like an extra step. We've contacted all of the people that were sent the notice of this appeal. Everyone got a letter from us. We had a meeting at our church if anybody had showed up. We were available to answer any questions that there might be about what we were doing, why we were doing it, and how it would affect our neighbors. We also contacted our council person, Ms. Van Rees. She approved. I have a letter where she gives her approval. The Madison Chamber of Commerce, we spoke with Debbie Massey there. She also supports us in this matter. From those letters we sent out, we had no response. No one showed up at our meeting. But we actually did have some neighbors that gave us a letter in support of our sign. A couple things, I understand the laws, but to make this a little easier, from where the sign will be placed, in a 300-foot radius, there are only 2 homes that would be able to see our sign. There's one directly across the street, and they would be exactly perpendicular to the sign, so pretty much in line with the sign. And the other is a couple hundred feet away, facing. They would be parallel to the sign, so they would be the ones that would best see the sign. As far as the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, if you have any questions, I have a little bit of information on that. I don't know if that's something you need, but.
Well, no, I think that, I will say I'm very appreciative of the effort that you all went to talk to neighbors and to be sensitive to the impact that it would have on residences. And, I know that there are aspects of that act that say if there's a compelling government interest to deny a religious organization, this sign then that would be within our purview. And so I only say that because there are probably churches that are in much more densely residential areas than yours, and I don't want to send the signal that, by saying that I think this is appropriate for your church, because it certainly feels that way, that's a blanket statement for all churches in residential zones or that are bordering residential zones. But I do think that certainly based on your testimony that you all have done above and beyond what you need to do to make sure that the neighborhood, the council, the chamber, the neighbors that are all supportive of this, and so I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you. We're sort of, we were probably zoned, I really couldn't find exactly when the area was zoned. I would guess probably in the 60s, and as you well know, this area has grown quite a bit. As was previously stated, the intersection that's about 2 blocks away, 3 years ago when Public Works done their study, there were 52,000 plus cars a day come through that intersection. So we are in a residential area, but it's not very residential.
So are you replacing the existing sign, or we have two signs?
Well, actually, we are going to replace the existing sign. The existing sign was put there, I believe, early 90s when the church was considerably smaller than what it is now. It was actually in the front of the center of the church. We've expanded over the last several years, and we would like to move the sign back down in front of what is currently sort of the center of the church. But yes, that other sign will be removed.
Any other questions? Anything else to add?
No, sir.
I'd like to echo what Mr. Taylor said about you reaching out to your council person, the chamber, neighbors. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, let's close the public hearing. Okay.
Are we going to hear from the administrator, or?
Oh, since this is item A, yes. We do have our zoning administrator that we are hearing what his side is on this.
I'm happy to say nothing. I'll acknowledge that we have certain federal and state laws that speak to this, that trump any local zoning that we may